Picture this. The ground beneath you shudders with a deep, guttural groan. The crystalline towers that moments ago pierced the heavens now weep shards of light, surrendering to a furious, boiling sea. You are a citizen of Atlantis, and you are witnessing the impossible, the end of eternity. This isn't just a myth of a sunken city. It is the true, terrifying story of a paradise lost to its own grotesque ambition. Before the cataclysm, Atlantis was a jewel cradled by the sea. A city of concentric rings of land and water, a perfect geometry mirroring its society. For millennia, its people lived in a state of grace. Their technology, powered by mysterious crystals humming with the Earth's energy, was an extension of their will to coexist with nature. Their architecture was a living art form, towers of iridescent material channeling sunlight into the city's heart. The Atlanteans were philosophers and scientists, their ruler a first among equals, his authority derived from wisdom, not force. They had mastered sciences like genetic engineering, effortless flight, and a telepathic network that connected every citizen, creating a collective empathy that made cruelty unthinkable. Yet, even in paradise, a shadow can grow. A faction led by a charismatic but flawed visionary named Lycurgus saw their peace as stagnation. He spoke of destiny, of a world needing their guidance. His words were a slow poison, twisting pride into arrogance. The tyrant was not yet born, but his philosophy was taking root, foreshadowing a rot that would consume the city. The very crystals that powered their lives held a darker potential. The power for absolute, terrifying destruction. The shift was insidious. Lycurgus and his architects of destiny did not seize power. They seduced it. They argued their advancement came with a responsibility to uplift lesser peoples. It began with missions of aid. But the gifts of Atlantean technology came with strings. Barbarian tribes soon found themselves dependent. Their cultures eroded. Those who resisted were met with subtle subjugation. Their resources exploited, their lands annexed under the guise of protection. The helpless victims were not just the conquered, but the Atlanteans themselves, who felt the creeping unease through their telepathic network. But to question the architects was to question progress itself. The complicit system enforcers were scientists and diplomats who saw only the greater good, designing systems of control and drafting treaties of surrender. The great crystals, once used to heal, were recalibrated and weaponized. Lycurgus demonstrated this by quelling a distant volcano, a feat hailed as a miracle. But a few dissenting voices saw the threat. The power to calm a volcano was also the power to create one. The dysfunctional tyrant was solidifying his rule, his obsession with order metastasizing into a political psychosis. Atlantis was no longer a beacon but a fortress. The cruelty, once a subtle undercurrent, now flowed openly. Lycurgus, now High Counselor, declared that the final barrier to a perfect world was human imperfection. This philosophy gave birth to the Purity Initiative, a program of systematic eugenics. Those deemed impure were taken to rehabilitation centers, where brilliant physicians engaged in grotesque experiments to engineer obedience. The telepathic network became a tool of surveillance. Dissenting thoughts were identified the moment they formed, and the thinkers were quietly removed. The suffering of the helpless victims in these centers was an immense, silent, psychic scream, deliberately filtered from the collective consciousness. The empire expanded, its dominion absolute, crushing any resistance with energy, weapons, and aerial warships. The tyrant's paranoia grew with his power. He saw threats everywhere. His obsession focused on an ultimate weapon, a device that could harness the planet's geothermal core, giving him the power to sink continents at will, the ultimate expression of his twisted fantasy of control. Yet, even in the darkest heart of the empire, a flicker of the old Atlantis survived. A clandestine resistance, led by councilwoman Ilara, formed. They were the last of the philosopher guardians, and they saw Lycurgus as the city's executioner. Unable to fight him with force, they worked in the shadows to sabotage his plans, creating a hidden archive of the knowledge he sought to erase. Their greatest allies were the regime's victims. Some test subjects had developed a resistance to the psychic dampening fields, their minds sharpened by suffering. They became Ilara's spies, their tragedy fueling a desperate hope. The resistance knew time was short. The geothermal weapon was nearing completion in a massive laboratory at the island's center. Lycurgus planned a demonstration. He would create a new island to terrify the world into submission. The scientists on the project were plagued by doubts. Their calculations showed the catastrophic risks of tapping the planet's core. But to voice these concerns was a death sentence. They pushed forward, their fear silencing their reason. The day of the demonstration arrived under a sky of unnatural stillness. Lycurgus stood in the central control chamber, his eyes reflecting a madness that saw destruction as the ultimate act of creation. Ilara and her resistance made their final, desperate move. They initiated a logic bomb in the weapon's control systems, a subtle corruption of its protocols. It wouldn't stop the activation, but they hoped it would create a power surge large enough to disable the device. As Lycurgus gave the command, a beam of pure energy plunged deep into the Earth's crust. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the ground began to shake. Ilara's logic bomb had worked, but its effect was catastrophically miscalculated. It caused the entire regulatory system to fail. The weapon ripped open a direct, unstoppable conduit to the planet's molten heart. A feedback loop of unimaginable power roared up the conduit and shattered the master crystal. The explosion was not a sound, but a physical blow that vaporized the center of the island. A shockwave and a towering wall of water scrubbed the island clean. The tyrant, his enforcers, the victims, and the rebels all met the same fate, a moment of terrible, absolute equality in the face of self-inflicted annihilation. The fall of Atlantis was not a myth, but a warning. It is a story that has echoed through the ages, fragmented and distorted. The few survivors, flung far by the blast, carried with them the traumatic memory of its downfall, seeding ancient cultures with whispers of a drowned paradise. The true story of Atlantis is not one of divine retribution, but of human folly. It is a testament to the terrifying truth that the same ingenuity that can build a utopia can also engineer its complete destruction. The dysfunctional tyrant, the helpless victim, and the complicit system enforcers are not figures confined to history. They are recurring archetypes in the human story. The legacy of Atlantis is a hollow dread, a somber reflection on our own capacity for greatness, and our terrifying, cyclical penchant for self-destruction. We search for its ruins beneath the waves, but its true remnants lie within us in our dreams of a perfect world, and in our nightmares of the price we might be willing to pay to achieve it.